Planet Reddit. Today's story is...
My birth mother found me through a photo in the newspaper 15 years after abandoning me, but the secret she revealed to her other children changed 3 families forever. My biological parents were university students when they started their relationship. My mother became pregnant without having planned it. Neither of them were ready for parenthood and they didn't know what to do. They consulted with my mother's family and decided to give me up for adoption. That's how I ended up in the foster care system. Living in foster care was not what many would imagine. I lacked a family of my own, I had no one to support me or to trust, and I was constantly overcome by a feeling of loneliness. What made this situation even more complicated was not only the absence of a family, but also the bullying I endured. I was frequently bullied by older children who seemed to target me because of my shy and different personality. I wasn't the kind of girl who could defend herself easily, and my introverted nature made me the perfect target for their taunts. They made fun of me for being studious, for not fitting in socially, for being too quiet. For much of my childhood, I was completely unaware of my origins, who my real parents were or what my personal history was. I had no information about my biological parents and I did not understand the reasons that led them to give me up for adoption. That part of my existence remained a mystery that no one talked about openly. Eventually, I was assigned to a family that apparently offered a somewhat better foster home. At first, I had the impression that my situation would finally improve. I was excited because I would finally have a family. However, I soon discovered that this new life was not as favorable as I had anticipated. The family that took me in seemed to be more interested in the financial compensation they received for taking care of me than in showing genuine concern for my well-being. They treated me as if I were simply an additional responsibility. I was assigned to sleep in a small room full of other children in similar circumstances to mine. We were all crammed into the same space, with no privacy, creating a suffocating feeling. It was difficult to feel like an integral part of the family when I was treated like that. The only aspect that kept me hopeful was school. It represented the only place where I could concentrate on my studies and try to build a future for myself. Although everything else in my life seemed extremely difficult, at least in the school environment I had the opportunity to escape temporarily and dream of something better. During my time at secondary school, something extraordinary happened that stuck in my memory. I won the school spelling bee. It felt like one of the most significant achievements of my life up to that point. To make it even more special, my name, my photograph, and the name of my educational institution were published in the local newspaper. For someone in my circumstances, this represented a considerable achievement. However, this recognition also marked a turning point in my life in a completely unexpected way. It turns out that newspaper article was how my birth mother found out about me. After giving me up for adoption, she had always been curious about my life. She had tried to find me before, but for years she had been unsuccessful. However, after seeing the newspaper and finding my name, she finally got the signal she had been waiting for. She took the first step by looking for additional information about me. Somehow she got my address and sent me a letter. To this day I don't know how she obtained that information, but that's how she managed to establish communication with me. The letter she sent me was emotionally intense, so I want to describe it in detail. In it she explained that she was my biological mother and asked me to get in touch with her. I had to read the letter 3 times to assimilate its content. But what really struck me were the photographs she included with the letter. There were pictures of her with my biological father, both of them looking happy and in love. In those photographs, they gave the impression of having everything under control in their lives. Looking at them, I could recognize something of myself in my mother's smile and facial features. It was a strange feeling to identify that connection and realize how much I physically resembled her. After reflecting on it for several days, I decided to write back to my birth mother. I had many questions, especially after the emotional impact of receiving her letter. I wanted to understand why she had given me up for adoption so many years ago. In her reply, she explained that she was young and did not feel ready to take care of me. She wrote that she made that decision because she did not feel ready to take on the responsibility of motherhood, and that she deeply regretted what she had done. I also asked her why she had decided to look for me after so long. In her next letter, she confessed that she had always thought about me and that she was curious to know how I was getting on in life and where I was living. She said that she had never forgotten me and that she often wondered how my life had turned out. After weeks of exchanging letters, the situation intensified considerably. My birth mother asked me if she and my birth father could meet me in person. I wasn't sure if I was emotionally ready for that kind of encounter. Part of me wanted to reject the proposal because it was too emotionally charged, but she insisted that it would only be a meeting and that there would be no negative consequences to us getting to know each other and talking. After much hesitation, I accepted, thinking that it might help me to better understand my past and my biological parents. The day I met my biological parents turned out to be one of the most uncomfortable and unpleasant experiences I have ever had. From the moment I arrived, everything felt strange. Neither of them seemed comfortable in my presence. They didn't even greet me properly, without hugs or handshakes. My biological father barely looked at me and didn't say a word during the whole meeting. It was as if he were physically present but emotionally absent. My mother, on the other hand, was nervous and talked incessantly about random topics from her life, trying to avoid any moment of silence during the meeting. At a certain point in the conversation, she casually mentioned that they were now trying to have another child, as they had formally married. I thought to myself, there they were, talking about starting a family with another child while I was sitting there trying to understand what my place was in their lives. So I gathered up all the courage I could muster and asked directly, "Are you ever going to adopt me? Don't you want me to come back to you?" On hearing my question, my biological parents were left speechless. My father, who until that moment had hardly taken part, looked sideways at my mother. She, for her part, tried to offer an explanation. She said that she only wanted to see me to make sure that I was well. She admitted that they had always felt some sense of guilt for abandoning me, but that it was impossible for them to adopt me at that moment. She explained that I could not be integrated back into their lives without everyone finding out that she had become pregnant with me when she was young. She had kept it a secret from almost everyone, including my biological father's family. She did not want anyone to know the truth. She told me that she and my father had decided to start over with new children. That the purpose of this meeting was to provide me with emotional closure, so that in the future I would have no more questions about them. I understood that for them, I was just a reminder of something they would rather forget. I was unwanted. I didn't have an important place in their lives. I felt worthless. They were perfectly happy with the idea of having new children, but they couldn't even consider bringing me back into their lives. I was simply a mistake they wanted to erase, a part of their history they wished had never happened. In that moment, I experienced a sense of abandonment deeper than ever before. I was outraged with them, so I told them they could have saved themselves the effort of contacting me after so many years, that it was a cruel act. My life had been difficult, but I was trying to get ahead on my own. However, now they had caused even greater emotional damage. I didn't want to have anything more to do with them. I didn't want them to play with my emotions, creating false expectations only to disappoint me again. I looked directly at my birth mother and told her that she could continue with her life as she saw fit, but that it was not my responsibility to make her feel better or to ease her feelings of guilt. I had already gone through too many difficulties in the foster care system, and I didn't want them to complicate my situation even more by trying to keep in touch. I made it clear that I would rather never have known them than to have known them and continue to experience their rejection. I could see my biological father's face turning red with embarrassment, and my mother looked like she was about to cry. I said no more and left. After that day, I cut off all communication with my mother and waited for her to simply disappear from my life. I wanted nothing to do with her. Or either of them. The whole experience left me emotionally shattered, and I cried for days. It took a lot of therapeutic work, which I accessed later in my life, to even begin to accept that reality. To understand that I might never have the kind of family I had dreamed of for so long. Fortunately, I now have a wonderful partner who truly understands my upbringing. He loves me for who I really am, and that is something I never imagined I would experience. I have never felt the need to re-establish contact with my biological parents, nor have I questioned them over the years. I have learned to live without the idea of having a family, at least not a family united by blood ties. A short time ago I received an email from a person called Kaylee, who claimed to be my sister. In the message, she explained that she had recently discovered my existence. Apparently, she had been looking through some old photographs of my birth mother's pregnancy and found one of me in the hospital, just after she gave birth to me and abandoned me. It was then that Kaylee and his brother confronted my biological parents and managed to get the truth about me. My sister wrote that she later looked me up on LinkedIn and managed to contact me. She said that she had always wanted a sister and would love to meet me, adding that I could take as long as I needed to consider it. I felt like I was a child again, the same child who had spent sleepless nights after meeting my biological parents that time. I had worked hard to move on with my life, but now, with this email, I felt like I was being dragged back into a situation I would rather not be involved in. I was still processing her message when, 2 days later, my birth mother also made contact. Apparently she had obtained my email address through her daughter, and in her message she invited me to dinner at her residence. She mentioned that her children had numerous questions for me, and that she really wanted me to come and meet them all. He even wrote that my biological father would behave more appropriately on this occasion, as if he were acknowledging how uncomfortable our last meeting had been, when he barely spoke to me and refused to interact with me. I get the impression that they are simply trying to appear concerned about me in front of their children, so as not to lose face in front of them, when in reality I'm convinced that I do not represent a genuine concern for my biological parents. Their sudden interest in me feels fake, and I'm not sure I want to be part of it. So now I'm turning to Reddit just to confirm. Would it be wrong if I decline their invitation to dinner, or should I make the effort to build a relationship with my siblings? Update. Opinions in the comments have been divided between those who suggest not attending because of my parents and those who point out that my siblings could be very different from them. And personally, I find myself equally undecided, because certainly my sister expressed a genuine desire to have a sisterly relationship, unlike my parents who were simply curious about me. The most complicated part of this situation is that it represents a rather unique experience, because there are not many people going through this same problem who can offer me advice based on similar experiences. To provide additional information, last night, my biological mother sent me another email. She asked me if I would accept her invitation to dinner for next weekend, and even asked me what my favorite food was so she could prepare it especially for me. Initially, I didn't know what to think about it. To be completely honest, I found it slightly disturbing. She is asking such thoughtful questions, but it feels strange because she has been a complete stranger to me all my life. I have never had a relationship with her, and now suddenly, she is acting as if she cares about all these little details, my food preferences, my time availability, and similar aspects. My intuition tells me that her children are wondering why I was given up for adoption, and they don't know how to respond appropriately. They probably want to treat me kindly at dinner, prepare my favorite dishes, make me feel welcome so that their children don't develop negative feelings towards them for what they did to me. Obviously, I lack experience because I have never been part of a family. But if I had had that opportunity, knowing that my parents gave my sister up for adoption and never tried to get her back would certainly make me feel indignant. I continue to be torn between the desire to meet the rest of my biological family and leaving the whole thing in the past. It is a complicated situation, and I really need time to think about it. Update 2. Some time has passed since my last update. After considerable internal debate, and honestly, an intense emotional struggle, I finally decided to meet my biological parents and their children, Kaylee and Matt. I didn't do it out of consideration for my parents, I did it thinking of my siblings. I wanted to meet them because my sister's message conveyed sincerity. I also didn't want my parents to present a distorted version of events. From the moment I entered their home, my biological parents behaved excessively kindly, almost as if they were trying too hard to show their concern. It was clear that they wanted to project the image of perfect parents in front of their children, as if they were trying to erase the past and prove that they were not the villains who had abandoned me. Their behavior seemed so rehearsed, so calculated, as if they were putting on a performance for their children, trying to clean up their image. I could tell that they didn't want to be seen as inadequate parents, especially not in front of their children. On this occasion, even my biological father asked me numerous questions about my life, and he seemed overly enthusiastic about getting to know me. As Kaylee and her brother were interested in finding out details about my life and my experience in foster care, I decided to be completely honest with them, exactly as they requested, and tell them the painful truth about how terrible my childhood was. I told them about the abuse, the bullying, the loneliness. I opened up about all the adversity I faced, everything I had to endure growing up without a family, without anyone who genuinely cared about me. I wasn't going to present an altered version just because my parents were being cordial and kind. That was my reality, and I wasn't going to hide it out of consideration for anyone. While Kylie and Matt looked at me with expressions of surprise and concern, my biological parents, instead of showing empathy, tried to minimize everything I told them. They acted as if it hadn't been that serious, as if I was exaggerating to generate pity. They said things like surely it wasn't that terrible, and hinted that maybe I was dramatizing my story to seek compassion. It was clear that they were trying to downplay everything I experienced just to feel better about themselves. Either way, I continued to tell my story, and that was the only thing that mattered to me. If it made them uncomfortable, it was not a problem for me at all. Fortunately, Kaylee and Matt weren't paying attention to their parents and wanted to know more about me, so they asked all kinds of questions. They were annoyed because their parents tried to interrupt me and play down my feelings. I am convinced that they were also affected to learn that, while they grew up happily with my biological parents, I was abandoned and had to survive on my own. I didn't want them to feel sorry for me, but they asked me questions and I had to tell them the whole truth, no matter how harsh it was. Kaylee had tears in her eyes when she hugged me, and both she and her brother confronted their parents, questioning them about how they could have done this to me, how they could have abandoned their own daughter. Matt even told me that he would have loved to have grown up with 2 sisters instead of just one, and hearing that touched me deeply. My vision was blurring because my eyes were filled with tears, due to the beautiful words they were dedicating to me. But my biological parents were not satisfied and needed to modify the situation so as not to be left looking bad. They began to accuse me of making up stories to predispose their children against them. My biological father called me jealous and resentful. Indeed, at that moment, the cordial and polite attitude ended. They went on to openly attack me in front of their children. My biological mother also insisted that, although she still felt guilty for giving me up for adoption, I should talk more about the positive aspects of my life instead of concentrating exclusively on the negative. One could tell that she was desperate to distance herself from the truth, trying to label me as a resentful person. If what happened in my life seems like an attack to them, then it is because they have been ruthless people, not because I relate or hide what happened. That night, nor in our previous meeting, did they offer any kind of apology, just excuses and accusations. Nothing more. And it wasn't just me who had noticed. Their own children were accusing them of just that. They continued to insist and defend themselves. I was already frustrated and finally I exploded. You know what? That's enough. I have told you the truth. I have told you what you made me suffer, how your actions affected me for years, and yet all you have done is try to twist it and present me as the villain. You don't want to hear the truth, do you? You've never wanted to face what you did to me, and now you're acting as if I'm the one who's damaged. Well, I'm done. I'm finished. I don't want you to contact me again. I don't need you and I don't want you in my life. I've been better off without you, and I intend to stay that way. I looked at Kylie and her brother, and they seemed furious with their parents. They asked me to stay a little longer, but I didn't want to be there anymore. Nothing positive would happen if I extended my stay. That was the end of the meeting. I don't want to consider that everything turned out negatively, because I experienced a very positive feeling with my siblings, despite the fact that my parents tried to ruin everything. But indeed, my biological parents will never accept that they made a serious mistake by re-establishing contact with me for selfish reasons. They have always acted for self-interested reasons, and even their own children have observed that side of their personality. Update 3. A few weeks have passed since the meeting with my biological parents, and I assumed that would be the end of it. After what happened, my parents didn't want to see me again, and they probably would have forbidden their children to do so as well. I've no regrets. I said what I needed to say, but I received messages from Kylie and Matt. Both apologized on behalf of their parents. Kylie and Matt admitted that they were horrified to hear about all the experiences I went through in the foster care system and to see how their parents played down my story. They wrote to me about the shame they felt towards them, how they would never have imagined that their own parents could treat a daughter like that. After I left, my biological parents continued to deny my version of events. They continued to minimize everything, behaving as if I was wrong for having told them my story. At one point, my biological father even went so far as to say that he had no regrets about abandoning me. Kylie and her brother said that hearing the truth directly from me and witnessing their parents' reaction allowed them to see clearly. They could no longer perceive them in the same way. Now they looked at them from a different perspective, and that led them to question everything they had ever believed about their family. Both of them suggested we meet again or help me in any way possible. They wanted to be there for me, to make up in some way for what their parents had done to me. I think they feel guilty about themselves and their parents, but I don't think they should, since until recently they were completely unaware of my existence. They want to know more about me and I will grant them that wish, but only up to a point. I also wrote to them that although my time in the care system was extremely difficult, it is now in the past. I gradually rebuilt my life through my own efforts. I told them that I understood their anger towards their parents, but that I did not want to be the cause of a family breakdown between them. They had their own lives, and I didn't want to become the cause of more conflict in their family environment. Kylie and her brother sent me some additional emails, trying to convince me to at least keep in touch with them. But I don't know what decision I will make. Part of me wants to continue the contact with them, but another part prefers to stay away from my biological parents. Update 4. I have kept my distance from my parents because I don't want to hear them accusing me of something again, when they are the ones who have really caused the damage. In any case, my siblings have done something that has caused a family cataclysm for everyone. They have revealed the truth to the rest of the family. My biological father's parents never knew about my adoption, while my mother's parents were informed, if they remember correctly. Well, both Kylie and Matt went to tell them the whole situation regarding me, about the contact we had years ago and about the last dinner. This triggered a family conflict of considerable proportions. I received another message from Matt and Kylie telling me what had happened, as well as warning me that I would soon receive other emails, and not from them. My father's parents were surprised and, curiously, wanted to meet me. But at the same time they were angry with my biological mother's parents for having withheld information from them. They said they could have found another solution instead of just handing me over to the foster care system. Shortly after my siblings' message, I received a message from them expressing their desire to meet me. On the other hand, my maternal grandparents were also outraged with my parents. Because while they supported the decision to give me up for adoption, since my parents would not take responsibility for me, they never expected them to contact me again just to cause me more pain. Even the last dinner seemed terrible to them because they felt that this was not the right way to handle the situation. They also wrote me an email expressing their desire to meet me. Finally, my siblings and I decided to organize a large meeting with all my grandparents at my paternal grandparents' residence, but without my parents. It was a completely different experience to the previous dinner because, although there were some tears, I'm not going to deny it, it was also very comforting. Not only was I able to talk about my experiences, but also to listen to my siblings and my grandparents. We spent many hours talking, although there are still many more to get to know each other better. My grandparents have had an extremely interesting life, and my siblings are the best I could wish for. Since then, I have continued to meet up with them, but individually, to have more intimate conversations, one-on-one. And although it is emotionally intense, I love it because I can learn so much. For example, Kaylee and I get on extraordinarily well and have many of the same interests. I think I enjoy having a younger sister, just as I think she appreciates having an older sister. With Matt the relationship is different because he is a boy and I don't share the same interests in the activities that appeal to boys, but we have been to the cinema and then had fast food. And that last part, although I recognize that it is not healthy, is what we enjoy most together. Even so, I love listening to him talk about sports and similar topics, even if I don't understand much about it. My parents, for their part, are not very pleased that the whole family is integrating me in a certain way, because they continue to insist that their actions were not so serious. However, even if they had not been, that does not justify them contacting me only to feel better about themselves, while causing me new suffering. That is not the behavior of a true parent. They have been arguing with their respective parents, and each of them has told them something different, but along similar lines. My paternal grandparents have told them that they can forget about them, because what they did is unforgivable. One of the reasons why they never revealed my existence to them is that they profess a religion, to the point of having invited me to a religious service on Sunday. But I told them that I am not a believer and they have not exerted any pressure in this respect. Contrary to what I imagined, the fact that they are religious does not make them intolerant or bad-tempered people. I would even dare to say that they are some of the most affectionate people I have ever met. My maternal grandparents, on the other hand, told them not to interfere in this matter, because the family wants to get to know me. They have told them that they have already caused enough damage and that, if they know what's good for them, they should keep quiet. They tried to stop my brothers from communicating with me or going out with me, but thanks to my maternal grandparents, who are the only ones who still communicate with them, they managed to make them reconsider their position. For the moment, as long as I don't have to interact with my parents, everything is going incredibly well. And I think the feeling is mutual, because they too have shown no interest in knowing anything about me. They still seem to feel aversion or contempt towards me. But as long as they don't stop me from relating to the rest of the family, I think that's a perfect situation. I wouldn't say that I now have a family, but it feels comforting to know these people. I feel loved in a different way to the love I receive from my partner, like two different types of affection. They have even had friendly arguments to decide who I will spend the holidays with this year. But these are small, friendly disputes, very different from the conflicts I witnessed during Christmas in the foster homes. For this reason, I consider this to be my last update on this platform. With all the lost time I need to make up for, I hardly have time to sit down and write. It has even taken me weeks to do so because I could never find the right opportunity. Between spending time with my siblings, introducing them to my friends, and meeting my grandparents for coffee and cake, I feel extremely busy. But it is the kind of busyness that I enjoy experiencing.